Okay, so today we're going to talk about is demand. Okay, so this lesson is on simple demand. Next lesson will be on supply, then we'll talk about how they work together. But with demand, on our graph, on the x-axis we have quantity, and on the y-axis we have price. Demand is downward sloping. Okay, and we get that because of the law of demand. The law of demand simply says as price goes up, and remember P is price, as price goes up there is a decrease in quantity demanded. Much like as price goes down, that leads to an increase in quantity demanded. And we get our quantity and price based on something called a demand schedule. And in a demand schedule you'd have price and quantity. So for instance, if it's $5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we would want at $5 less, at $4 a little bit more, and at $1 we would demand more of whatever it is that we're demanding. So you can see as price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. Okay? And therefore the graph is a downward slope. The curve is a downward sloping curve. That is the very baseline for demand. It's from a consumer's perspective, right? So as the price is high, so for instance point A right here, we have P sub 1 and Q sub 1. However, if the price is lower, we'll call that point B, the price at P sub 2 is lower, and at Q sub 2, the quantity is high. Quantity demanded is high. Okay? We say quantity demanded when it's moving along the curve. What I want to teach you real quickly is the difference between quantity demanded and demand. When is there a change? Remember, delta means change in. When is there a change in quantity demanded, and when is there a change in demand? So let's do change in quantity demanded first. A change in quantity demanded is only based on a change in price. Remember, change in P. P means price. And it moves along the curve. So anytime there's a change in price, the quantity demand will move along the same demand curve. Again, if we're here at point A, then we're demanding P sub 1 price, and we are buying Q sub 1 quantity. If the price moves down to P sub 2, then we're going to be move along the curve from A to point B, and our new quantity demanded is Q sub 2. So a change in quantity demanded is only based on a change in price. Okay? The curve does not move, we just move along the curve. Right? We move from point A to point B, or from point B to point C. If, for instance, price went up to P sub 3, we would hit this point right here on C. Higher price leads to, we'll say, Q sub 3, a smaller quantity demanded. So that is quantity demanded. Okay? And again, we get these numbers from a supply schedule. I'm sorry, from a demand schedule, my fault. From a demand schedule. The demand schedule tells us how much. Now on this graph we don't have specific numbers, but if we were going to plot a demand curve, supply and demand curve with numbers, we would get those numbers from a demand schedule. Now let's look at what we call a change in demand. Alright, if we have an increase in demand, the curve goes to the right. A decrease means to the left, right? So right equals increase. A shift to the left equals a decrease in demand. Right? So why is it that we would go from our starting point, which is our demand curve, to D sub 1 or to D sub 2? Well, there are essentially 6 reasons why, and I have them all up here. The first one, remember, demand is from the perspective of a consumer. So if there's a change in the number of consumers, this will shift our demand curve to the right or the left. For example, if there are more people in an area, then the demand will increase. So we would go from D to D sub 2. Remember, right is an increase. Moving to the right is an increase. If people move out of an area, so for instance Eastern Kentucky, people move out of the county, there's going to be less of a demand for any kind of good, right? This curve could be any kind of good, right? So if there's a decrease in consumers, then we move from D to D sub 1. Remember, price hasn't changed, just the number of consumers, so the demand curve will shift. Over here, the curve doesn't shift, you just move along the curve because of a change in price. Change in price means change in quantity demanded. Here, a change in consumers means a shift. Same thing if there's a change in income. If you get a lot more money, you're going to demand more goods. Whatever this demand curve is, we'll call it, cars. All right. Well, this will be our cars graph. We will demand more cars if we have more income. Now, if the price changes, we would go along our curve. But here, if we get more money, then the demand curve shifts to D2. If we get less money, the demand curve shifts to D sub 1. Remember, keep difference. The change in quantity demanded is along the curve. Change in demand is a shift of the curves. A third portion is change in expectations. If we think that something's going to happen in the future, that will change the way that we consume goods. For instance, if we think that gas is going to jump up 100% in the next 2 years, that will change the way that we buy our cars. In fact, we may buy cars now that are really fuel efficient, right? So the demand for fuel efficient cars might go up because we expect oil to be going up in price. The cars haven't changed price, but the oil has, and so our expectation will lead us, we need to buy more hybrid cars or more fuel cell cars or whatever. If we see that gas is going to drop by 50%, then we may, oh wow, well, maybe we can finally afford that SUV because it's so expensive with gas. So demand for hybrids might go down and demand for SUVs might go up. Okay? Another one is a change in preferences. Over time, what we like to buy or like to use or consume changes. Right now, Justin Bieber is a really popular singer, so his ticket prices might be really high in demand, but in 5 years from now, probably not so much, right? When I was a kid, everyone wanted to go to Menudo concerts. When I was 6, I mean, I didn't want to because I was 6, but all these girls want to go to Menudo concerts, and now nobody knows who Menudo is, all right? So demand would have increased, in 1982 for Menudo, but now there is basically demand for Menudo concerts might be about right there, all right? Change in the price of a substitute. A substitute is something you can put in the place of it. So, instead of buying iPods, you can buy MP3 players. Or instead of buying, butter, you could buy margarine. Those are substitutes. So if the price, for instance, if this is butter, right, and this graph is margarine, if the price of margarine goes up, that means the demand for butter will go up, right? Because if the price for butter goes up, let's say from point B to point A, we're going to demand a smaller quantity of margarine. So instead, we're going to demand more of butter because it's a substitute, right? Same thing, if the price of margarine goes from A to B, so the price actually goes down from P sub 1 to P sub 2, we're going to have a smaller demand for butter because margarine is cheaper, right? The substitute is cheaper. So we'll go from D to D sub 1. All right? The price of butter hasn't changed, but its demand has, based on the price of margarine. All right? And the last thing is a change in the price. Again, P is price. A change in the price of a complement. A complement is a good that goes along with another good. For instance, chips and salsa, or peanut butter and jelly, or Bert and Ernie's, or whatever. If the price of jelly goes up, then we're going to have a smaller quantity demanded of jelly, but we're also going to demand less peanut butter because it is a complement, right? If we're not eating much salsa because the price of salsa is really high, then we're going to be buying fewer chips. If the price of salsa goes low, to P sub 2, and they're wanting a lot more salsa, now we're going to demand a lot more chips. And the curve of the chips graph, right, will go from D to D sub 2 because the price of salsa has gone down. The salsa curve hasn't shifted, just the quantity demanded for salsa. But the demand for chips has changed. Remember, right is an increase, left is a decrease. A change in quantity demanded is based on a change in price, where a change in demand in general means a shift of the demand curve. To the right increase or the left decrease based on these 6 things. Change the number of consumers, change in income, change in expectations, change in preferences, change the price of a substitute, and change the price of a complement. And remember, this is all based on our law of demand. Law of demand, as the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. As the price goes down, there's an increase in quantity demanded, which you can see on these curves. Okay, so this should be a baseline for our idea of what demand is.